let's real quick talk about COVID. You're talking about how hard it is right now to buy properties at the right price.
Yeah.
How are you preparing, and what are you preparing for?
All of this money just got pumped into the economy.
Yeah.
The people that know how to invest will continue to know how to invest. The people that don't know how to invest will continue not to know how to invest. It's sad but true, right?
Yeah.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, guys, thank you for joining me on the show. I appreciate you being here. Welcome back if you've been here before. If you haven't, then welcome to the show for the first time. My name is Mike Simmons. I am your host, and I am excited to bring you the episode that I have teed up for you today. Guys, I talked to another really smart guy, a guy who is just crushing it in our industry. He came from the tech side of things, just an entrepreneur at heart with a tech background. And after initially beginning investing in single-family homes, which a lot of us do, he decided to scale up and go to apartment complexes. He started a company called Disrupt Equity, cool name, and he's focusing on multifamily acquisitions at this point. And he's raised millions of dollars from multifamily syndications and nearly 2,000 units so far. He's not been in the game that terribly long, but he really knows his stuff. And like I said, he came from the tech industry and just has some great ideas about how to pull some of us out of the Stone Age and how we do things. And he's using technology to streamline his processes, and just a smart guy who knows a lot about real estate investing, multifamily. Even we talk about some single family stuff. Like, he's sort of done it all in that space, and he's just running a great business. He's a smart guy. His name is Feras Moussa, and I was excited to talk to him, guys, and I'm not going to make you wait any longer. Let's dive into the meat of this. Let's talk to Feras. All right, without any further delay, Feras Moussa. All right, Feras, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to our listeners.
No, thanks, Mike, for having me. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Of course. Thank you. So for those of the listeners who don't know who you are, I do, because we just met, but I do a lot of research and I try to find out who I'm talking to before I hop on. Some podcasters go totally cold. I can't do that. I like to have some idea of who I'm talking to and what their background looks like. But for those of us who don't know, why don't you give people a brief background on who you are, where you come from, what your background is professionally, and if anything before real estate, and then kind of transition at how you got into real estate.
No, absolutely happy to. I mean, for me, I'm the tech to real estate guy, right? You probably heard that story many times. And, for me, I grew up in Texas, in Houston specifically, went to college and did computer science, always been an entrepreneur at heart, had my own little web company back in high school, and, always knew I'd get into kind of that space in one way or another, right? And so I like to say I accidentally went to career fair, gave out some resumes, and because I had a web company, attracted the bigger companies, right? I had something to show, whereas other people, at that point in their life, most people hadn't done much. Right. And so accidentally did an internship, at Microsoft, right? Loved it. And, I was kind of weighing, what do I do? And I decided, all right, 3 years and I'm out. That's what I told myself. So 3 years, kind of go get that on my resume, go get that experience, and then, move on and go do my own thing. And so ended up being 3.5 years, but I did leave Microsoft, left on really good terms. As kind of, it was that extra half year because I wanted to make sure I left at the right point in time in the release cycle, where no one is, not ruffling any feathers. And, left and kind of had my own software company for several years. And like a lot of people, was starting to explore different ways to invest, right? And, had obviously, coming from the tech world, stocks is the thing everyone thinks about. But, I was looking for different opportunities.
Let me stop you real quick, if you don't mind. Just real quick, what was you said you had a software company for a while when you left Microsoft. What was that software company? What did you do?
Yeah, so initially we were kind of identifying gaps within the various app platforms, right? And we had our own system that was literally doing 1 million API calls to Microsoft a day, kind of collecting analytics, trying to figure out what apps are trending and is there an app we can compete with.
Okay.
And so that went really well. And then at the end of it, kind of that third year, we doubled down and built property management software, right? I was starting to do the real estate at the same time, and I kind of saw that gap, and that ended up not working out, but that was kind of the focus of that.
Can I ask, what gap did you see in that
so
market?
The property, good question. So initially the thing that I was saying at the time, I had, 5 rentals maybe. And there was not a good tool for anyone to kind of track and keep really monitor the portfolio. Yeah. I went to a lot of events. The only other guy, there's only one other guy, his name is Greg, that I know. He was the only other guy that could tell me what his real cash on cash was on his properties. No one else really had a good system. Me and him are very analytical.
Yeah.
But there was kind of really a simple tool to help owners that are, kind of in that 1 to 10 unit range, right? The the not newbie, but not sophisticated owners, right?
Yeah.
Go manage our portfolio, collect rents, and then kind of fill that gap. And I think the gap was definitely there. We just ended up pivoting, trying to do property management full blown because it's, a much bigger bang for the buck. And now that we have our own management company here at Disrupt Equity, I realize all of the mistakes that we were making. Like we would have never been able to compete in hindsight.
What were some of those mistakes? Tell people what were some of the things that you did wrong?
It's, I guess, so for us, initially for the person, the non-sophisticated person, right? Excel was our competitor, right? And we can compete with Excel because we can flush it out, provide a lot of kind of the right tooling. Well, and those guys aren't using anything. So the barrier of entry is really low for them, right?
Yeah.
Now with a property management company, the first thing to realize is, that software is the core of that company. So ripping it out, it's like ripping out a heart and trying to put a new one in. It's not very easy, right? And even get them to want to make the change, right? There's a lot of friction. So I think really glossing over that. And so then we realize, okay, our customer is going to be the companies that are smaller, that are growing, they'll grow into us, right? We're not going to be able to go get anyone off of what they're using. Well, to grow into us, you realize these property management softwares are not just one piece of software. It's really 10 different things brought into one, from accounting, from, leasing to, just vendor and maintenance. There's a lot of pieces. And so while I like to say we were the Hummer at the things that we did, but we just didn't have enough of the breadth, even though we thought we did, right? Once I realized what large property management's about.
Yeah. And then back then you said you also did property management itself. Like you tried to branch off into that too.
I self-managed. So maybe kind of go back to the story a little bit, right? So software company was going on, was looking for a place to deploy my real estate, my kind of money. And I kind of really almost, knew about real estate, but I kind of stumbled into it. And, it's funny because I was still back in Seattle at the time. Before I moved back to Houston, I had a fourplex I had already found, because that's the thing everyone talks about and all the those, right? Go find a fourplex. Well, Houston doesn't really have a lot of fourplexes because land is so cheap. Yeah. But I did find a good fourplex, and coincidentally, it's about 1.5 miles from my office now. It's a small world. But, bought that before I moved back to Houston, got a taste for that, and then bought a bunch more houses, right? And, and then that's where, at the same time, was kind of had the property management software going, and I was self-managing those houses. Okay. And then, maybe to kind of tie the story all the way through, just realize it doesn't scale. Yeah. Right. For those of your listeners that have a rental portfolio, it sucks. You get, I had 12 units, and you have 12 different insurance policies, 12 different loans. Each loan is different. Each insurance policy is different. Loans get sold to other companies. Plus, I actually didn't have much friction on the tenant side. So I was lucky in that sense, right? I had, better quality tenants. I screened them, didn't have a lot of churn. And so that part was easy, but it's just all the other minutia. Yeah. And, while you can be very successful with rentals, right? Not the dog on that. It just didn't scale very well, right? In my mind. And so that's ultimately kind of found out about multifamily and just going off and doing my own kind of larger apartments, and, started Disrupt Equity, and the rest is kind of history from there.
Okay. So what made you specifically, you just said it doesn't scale well, but what did you see in the apartment market that you loved so much that you didn't have in the individual, residential house market?
Yeah. So no, maybe to answer that question a little differently. So what we do today is syndication, right? What I love about it is three things. It's a numbers game, right? Which you have that on the residential side, right? But the difference is you can't do things like forced depreciation, right? And, that's a problem. Whereas in commercial, I can literally almost, we call it forced depreciation. I know if I go in, do this business plan, and, just the simplest example, we have a deal we're selling right now, 30 down units that we had brought online. We're going to home run that deal because we knew if we brought the units online and got them rented, we would increase the income so significantly, right? And the way commercial is valuated, it's valued on income. And so you can't do that in residential. That was a big one, right? Finding, 30 houses, or let's just use an example. For buying a 200 unit apartment complex, finding 200 houses to buy is a lot harder than finding one 200 unit apartment complex, right? Yep. Yep. So that's kind of, it's really, there's a lot of closings, a lot of transactions in the real estate residential side, whereas on commercial, it's kind of more dense. And, I think the obvious one too to people is just dedicated team, right? Yep. These properties, we have dedicated staff that are on the property, in some cases live in the property, right? And they're, helping. It's a team. It's more of a leadership type of thing versus, hey, me doing all the grunt work. And yes, some people have systematized, house rentals, and they have their own team, but it's, you got to really look at it. Even if you have that one employee that goes to 10 different houses, that's a lot of time wasted in transit. And so for me, it was kind of the mix of those things that just made commercial a lot more attractive. So to me, it's a numbers, people, and systems game. Okay. So I think systems was the other big one, at least for us. It's been a big part of our success, is just being disruptive, right? And sorry for the pun, but
yeah,
finding things it's a really inefficient market.
okay,
right. And sorry to kind of maybe I'm hopping around a little bit, but you just maybe gave me a good thought is that back to the software thing. The reason I left Microsoft was to figure out, there's a lot of smart people that are working on tech problems at tech companies. Very few of them go into old industries like real estate. And so I always, from the get-go, my vision was to go off and go to some of these dated industries and apply the things that are almost the norm in tech and into some of these other industries. And, I've kind of since done that with the way we've kind of been able to grow.
Yeah, it's funny when you have that philosophy. I think it's like for you coming from tech, like you said, it's like, of course, this is standard. This is just standard in tech industry. But you go into an industry that's a little bit behind the times. It's like you're revolutionary when you're just doing something that in other industries is pretty pedestrian, right? Not to say what you're doing is pedestrian, but you know what I mean. It's just
no. I mean, even the
minds.
simplest thing. I'll give you the simplest. This is like one of the first eye openers for me. Our email templates. Several years ago, we were the first ones to have beautiful, mobile-friendly, we call them dynamic, responsive email templates. All the other ones, like all the updates from other operators, they were cruddy. I mean, I've invested in several of these and I saw them all. And so then we started sending these out, and it was funny to see everyone all of a sudden try to react and try to almost like some of them you can tell were copies of ours straight up. And that's a simple thing. Whereas tech, I mean, come on, responsive email is like 101 type of thing, right? And even another good example is Slack. Right. I mean, I've been using Slack since it first came out, 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, most guys are just now starting to adopt Slack. And, even on our management side, we've forced the teams to use that type of collaboration. We've since moved everyone to Teams for a different reason. But, that's just something that, again, everyone in tech knows what Teams and Slack are. Yeah. Most people in real estate still don't know what they are. Right. And the ones that do, it's been a new thing the past year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, even like pay-per-click, which has been around forever, right? I mean, there's still a lot of investors. I talk to them who they'll go, what's PPC? What's pay-per-click? I don't understand that. What is? So let me ask you a couple questions. Let me go back to the reasons why you like the syndication game and these apartment complexes. And I'm gonna approach this from someone who has rentals in single family. I don't have apartments, and this isn't me arguing with you. It's more like I want to just what's important to me is the people who are listening to this who are going, hey, wait a minute, what about this? I just at least want to get these thoughts out in the open and have you address them from your perspective, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, and I'm not going to get into the super deep weeds, but let's just do some of the high level ones that you hear single family home folks arguing all the time. And number one is renters who rent single family homes have more of the home ownership feel. Therefore, they'll stay longer. They have more home pride. They can store things. So it means they're a little bit more likely to not want to be transient because they have a basement or a garage full of things and their kids are playing in the yard. And, they have all those things that make them feel like they own a home or they're in an actual home because they are. And so you have people who stay around longer and they take better care of things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally a valid point, right? It's not that there's right and wrong. And I think people,
for
it's
sure.
not like, no. To me, it's a numbers game though, right? It's we bake in what it costs us to turn. And guess what? Whenever we do renewals and we get people to stay and, we give them we get them, let's just say we offer to install a ceiling fan and put a new paint for them.
Yeah.
That's cost us $500. It's better for them to renew at the $100 a month premium than it is to spend the $1,000 that we already budgeted. Yeah. And so for us, investments are more of a numbers thing. And to your point, though, the flip side of that is a renter in a house is likely to be able to outgrow that and go buy a house at some point.
Yeah.
Whereas an apartment, right, the income thresholds are different. And, honestly, if you build the right community, this is something we didn't even talk about that I really enjoy about what we do is that we can turn, rough deals into communities. And I mean that holistically in terms of places people want to go and stay. And they, a good apartment, actually tenants there will continue to renew, right? And because you've built a nice place and in a good area that they want to stay at. And they will actually police the other tenants, which is the great part about it, right? As you got to do that. And so they will say, well, so-and-so, he left that bag of trash. Guess what? And so, I think, I guess to me, it's more about the numbers of it if it supports it. By all means. And then,
you're right.
There's kind of a other side of the coin there.
Yeah, you're right. And I like what you said about, and it's true, right? So this is one of those things that you have to consider if you're a single family person. The single family renters typically, or a lot of times, they want to get into their own home. So they're almost predestined to leave because ultimately they want to own their own home. Not always, but a lot of times. How do you, and I'll phrase this differently so it's not more like a combative framing, but how do you look at diversity? And I don't mean diversity in the people who you rent to. I mean diversity in the location, meaning you buy an apartment building and it's in a location that's pretty good, maybe even is getting better, and something happens and goes the other direction. Now you have, 150 of these units that you can't, there's with single family, sometimes you can buy in different towns, different areas. You can diverse your risk in terms of an area kind of going bad for whatever reason. With apartments, you're not moving the apartment and you have a bunch of them basically stacked on top of each other, a bunch of people. So how do you, when you're evaluating a property, an apartment complex, what is your, if any, your thought process on where it's located, crime rates, income, all those kind of things?
Yeah. So I'll say three things I want to say maybe to that. The first one is any deal we're evaluating, it's constantly about, looking at the big macro fundamentals and then drilling down. On each step, you're taking risk out of the equation, right? And so we do look at all of those things and, as well as price, because I'll buy a deal anywhere, right? And that maybe goes to my second point, which is, there is money to be had no matter where you are. I mean, our traditional models have been in the C value add, CB value add. There's also money to be made in A space, right? We're kind of class A apartments. And so to me, it's about kind of weighing the risk and then the reward together. And then maybe kind of the third piece of that is, this is maybe what allows syndication to be really powerful, right? Because instead of me, let's just use an example, right? If you want to buy a $10 million apartment, that's $2 million, $3 million that you have to bring to closing. So instead of me putting $2-3 million of my own money into that deal, and now I'm very much doubling down on that area, like you said. And there's things that I'll never be able to control, right? The city decides to plop down a highway, and I can't do anything about that, right?
Right.
And so instead of me kind of having to bet all in on that, well, syndication kind of helps people glom together, funds into one larger vehicle that you are all then going forward on, right? But everyone's taking a smaller piece of risk, and so I think that's what's beautiful about syndication. It helps kind of mitigate that problem.
Okay.
Because, you have that problem no matter what type of real estate you do.
Okay. Are you buying all the properties that you buy locally or in your state, or are you all over the United States or all over?
No, our main market. So we're based here in Houston, but we have properties throughout Texas and Georgia. It's kind of our other market. And we want to get into Florida, but I can't find a deal. So Mike, if you know of a good deal in Florida, let us know.
Okay, we'll do it. Hey, if anybody out there knows a good deal in Florida, reach out. We'll give you some contact info at the end here. So how do you use technology to help people, and how do you identify good opportunities? Like how are you using that tech background to kind of aid you in this venture?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, we use it every step of the way that I can possibly think about it. And, and I think a good example is really on the management side, right? So what we've been able to do. So, obviously we're buying apartments. As we've grown, we've since started our own management company for our own assets, right? And it's doing third party. And what's been differentiating about it is just how much we use tech to really give visibility. I think the big problem with real estate is that because it's an older industry, there's very little transparency. So we've kind of taken the opposite approach of how do we modernize every step of the way, from the way our maintenance guys do a move out, update units and move in and get all that documented, to getting that to owners, right? Simple things like getting, our even having it, like, I guess VAs is a good example. We literally have a team of VAs that help with all steps of the way, because guess what? The more of the routine that we can take off of an on-site manager's kind of plate, the more that manager can focus on the things they're actually good at. Yeah. They're not, spending time on invoices. That's not a good use of a manager's time. Working with tenants is, right? Mm-hmm. And so really thinking that across the board, where if you have a resource that is not as expensive, but can be used to help audit, help kind of organize, you can really start to run with it.
Yeah.
And even, maybe one other big one too is just Asana. The concept of task management. I've had 6 different management companies that we've used. None of them have a centralized way to track and document what comes up on these calls.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we've kind of gotten that systematized. We use Asana, but there's a million of these different types of tools. But, getting that level of accountability between owners, between clients, between the property management companies. So, just kind of thinking down that process, right? I guess because at Microsoft, I was on the project management side, and I like to say syndication is project management on steroids, right?
Yeah.
And so really thinking and kind of being in tune with who should be working on what. Are they moving forward? Are they stalled, right? And how do we help them block them, right? And what's really, what's taking their time, and can we kind of rejigger things?
Okay.
And so
Let me ask you this real quick. I have a question that's going to take a little longer and a quicker one. Asana versus Slack. What's the difference? Why do you use both? And the reason I'm asking, this is a little bit off topic, but you're a tech guy, and I literally just had this discussion in my my mastermind company, and we were like, we're using Asana, and somebody's like, well, what about Slack? And we're like, wait a minute, why are we don't need two, so we're going to two different places. So we really had this debate, a bunch of non-tech people having this debate. Yeah. So what is the difference? Why do you use both?
Great question. Then let's add an email to that too, just to help really solidify that, right?
Right.
When should I use email? When should I use Slack? It's kind of confusing. So, Slack, the easiest way to think about it is it's a replacement for your texting, right? Okay. No longer are you guys texting all over the place, and because text is not reliable, right? I don't know if people know that, right? The delivery is not guaranteed. Whereas, with web tech like Slack, you can. Now, Slack and email are both an endless stream of communication. Right? Mm-hmm. That's ultimately what they are. There's just, there's things coming in, right? Now, with a tool like Asana, you can distill all that into the actual tasks that need to happen, right? So, the way to think about Asana is it's more task, more action items, types of pieces, right? Okay. Now, email is kind of that, but not enough people have enough email etiquette, right? I mean, I learned very early on at Microsoft how to work emails and be very, I never miss an email. My team knows that. There's never an email that at some point I'll get back to it. I'll maybe bombed, I don't get to it for a few weeks, but my email's very, I treat it like a task list.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So Asana is kind of a more simpler way for people to do that. Now the question then becomes, when do you use Slack? When do you do email versus Asana? That's kind of a trickier thing. But Asana is really, you break down projects into tasks, you give them as ownership, you get comment history, right? Because if you really think about an email, what happens in an email? People send it, maybe there's not a reply, there's not really visibility from people that should be on that project. Because let's say you can work on something 15 people, right? They should all have an idea of it, but you wouldn't send that email to 15 people, right? Yeah. And so it gets people to kind of sit passively. And then maybe the last thing, and this is what might drive home for you, Mike, is as you evolve in that kind of mentality, what Slack becomes, though, is it becomes your hub for communication and knowing what's happening in your business. And that's the peak that I think a lot of people struggle to. So, we had integrations on Slack. I mean, I have things like where whenever a review gets posted on any of our property, it automatically gets posted into a Slack channel, right? Whenever, another example? I had Slack integrated with Asana. So I did have a pulse on what projects, what comments are happening, all of that.
Okay.
Whenever someone maybe completes a form and a contact on our website, it'll automatically come into Slack. Okay. And so you start to tie these things. And so as kind of a person heading up a company, you don't need to know every little thing that's happening, but you need to have a good pulse on it. And so it becomes your command hub over time if you build it out appropriately.
Okay. So that was one thing I was going to ask you is, does Slack integrate with Asana so that you're having these conversations in Slack? You don't have this conversation lives over here, these comments are over here in Asana, and you don't know how to connect the two so they can integrate.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So that was actually the short question. The longer one was, and maybe this one will be short, I don't know. You mentioned that you have a team of VAs, right? VAs in real estate is like this, it seems ever since the 4-hour work week, right? It's like this holy grail that people keep getting wrong and getting frustrated. Here's my take on it, and you tell me how you guys utilize VAs. My take, and every region and area can be a little bit different, but I'm just going to talk about VAs from the Philippines because that's where a lot of people go and because it's very economical. What I have found is if you have a very linear, straightforward task that's well-defined and doesn't allow for a lot of variables, you can do it and it can work. But outside the box thinking, kind of thinking on your feet, so to speak, or using some deductive logic to kind of come up with their own decision about how things should be done is not necessarily a great result. That's what I've seen, at least. So for me, it's been frustrating because almost everything has some variability to it where you have to be able to, kind of use some, just think independently on it. So how do you use VAs and how are they best utilized in your company?
Yeah. So that frustration that you're talking about, because that's the very first layer of the onion, and you're right. But then that leads to maybe you don't have the right VAs, right? And there's kind of a couple things to just account for. The very simple things is, the things that are very simple, routine, go to this website, look for this thing, paste that here, send this email. Those are simple.
Yeah.
But then you have to kind of start to evolve and break down things, right? And I'll give you an example. We've systematized our entire takeover checklist for property management. So whenever we take over a property, right, there's a lot of things that have to happen. But guess what? My VA knows how to get certain documents from the owners, knows how to contact our bank and get that bank account spun up, knows how to send the e-sign. I mean, there's a lot more complexity happening there, and they can think on their feet, but you can't just lob it over. And I think that's what people think, because, imagine a person that you hired in the office. You can't just lob it off to them either. They're probably sitting next to you. You're walking through what you're doing and spending time teaching that person. I think not enough people spend the time to teach a VA some of these things because they're very capable, but you have to teach them. And there is very much a process to kind of helping train them. And then the other part of that too is documentation. Internally, we use Confluence, and so that's very much a tech thing, but think of it as an internal Wikipedia. And so in Asana, we have all the tasks the VAs work on. Each task has a corresponding Confluence page that documents how to complete that task. And as things change, as we find, we skipped the step, we go update that, right? And what's fun to me is whenever I teach a VA how to do something in person, like on Zoom or something, then I ask them to go document it. So that way they're doing that part of it. And that way it can become more of a gas pedal approach where I can, adjust kind of resources pretty easily because I know this thing is almost clear enough that anybody can go complete it. But it's work. There's very much a process that needs to happen to kind of get that effective.
And I'm a lobber. I'll just admit it. I'm a lobber. I've lobbed things and expected, good results, and that's obviously not a great thing. So do you use a service to find VAs? Do you find them yourself? Do you find it's better?
We interview them ourselves.
You interview them yourself.
There's different websites, but we definitely interviewed them ourselves. And, when we told them, hey, we pay them well, actually, probably too well sometimes. I was talking to our co-friend, Chris, that I mentioned last week. Yeah. And he I think I'm paying mine well, but I want that. I want the cream of the crop, right? I've learned as I've grown, it's better to pay up for an A than to pay down for a B, period. That's my new epiphany the past, I'd say past year and a half. And so, we pay, and by paying more, I'm talking we're paying $1 more, right? But that's not really much cost on us, but it is a big difference on their side. And so
you almost said it. What do you pay your VAs? Can you say it? Is it a big deal?
$7.50 an hour, between $6.50 to $7.50 an hour.
Okay.
So kind of $6.50 to $8. Depends. There's one of them. A few of them are like rock stars. I'm like, man, I'll continue to pay up because they're just producing, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm happy to pay it, and they're happy to get it because they care about the job. The sense of care about the job and pride of it is actually important. And we have our VAs on our video calls with the team. We get them part of the team, and I tell them, I promise I'm going to do this maybe next year. I'm going to fly the entire team from here out to Philippines, and we're going to go hang out with all of our, do what's kind of a company thing.
It'd probably be a blast and cost effective for the company because I think you can probably do a lot more. Yeah, it's about
incorporating them into the culture, right? They need to feel like they're part of the team, and they work U.S. hours, right? That's part of the requirement, but they're used to it, but they enjoy it, right? You want to make it to where they love what they're doing, and at the same time, they have kind of a go-to way to get help, right?
Yep.
It's not about just lobbying. So you have to really, you have to plan for it, right? It's work. On our side, it's absolutely work to do that. So,
do your VAs work for you exclusively? Do they work full time?
Yeah, and that's actually a very good point that I kind of glossed over. You should, anyone hiring VAs, guys. $7 an hour, full time. Do the math. What is that? 20 grand a year, 30 grand a year.
Yeah, not even.
You should have your VAs work full time for you, because if you get in a situation where they're kind of juggling between 2-3 things, that's whenever problems happen, because then you don't know what's on their plate and are they actually doing it or not. That's a bigger problem. So for us, we expect them to work for only us, right? Full time.
Yeah.
So they're available during kind of U.S. work hours.
$7 an hour, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year is $14,000. So it's way cheaper than even you were throwing out there. So let me ask a dumb question now. How do you know when you pay your VA $7 an hour and they tell you they're working full time for you that they're not working for 3 other companies at the same time?
It's funny. So for us, the service that we've hired them through is Upwork.
Okay.
Upwork actually has a little kind of client installed on their computer where it actually sends screenshots. We don't audit it though. Once you have a VA going, you just you trust them. It's just like any other employee.
Yep.
But it's there for most, and not one of them didn't have it, but it's very much there if we needed it. But it goes back to the system, and they're either getting things done or they're not, and it should be pretty apparent, right?
So
and this goes back to Asana, right? And using Asana appropriately.
I love that, and I asked the question not because I think it's necessarily valid. I just know how people think when they hear this kind of stuff. So you're absolutely right. I have the same philosophy. To a point, I don't care. what's happening, as long as I'm getting the work out of them that I expect to get in a 40-hour week. Like, if you have a VA who just can crush more than they're exceeding your expectations, getting everything done, and they're only, for whatever reason, they only work 30 hours one week. Like, I don't know. Do you really care if things are getting done? It's when things aren't getting done.
If I have someone that, they're getting all their stuff done. I mean, I don't care if they work 1 hour a week. I mean, if they're getting everything done and, they figured it out, by all means, I don't want a person that I have to micromanage. Right? That's more cost than letting them slide on 5-10 hours a week. So.
Totally. So let me ask you this, a little bit off the out of left field, but what are some of the challenges that you faced or face now even, but originally when you went off on your own? Because you work for Microsoft, obviously a very established company. A lot of things just sort of happen in the background. You don't have to worry about it. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, what were some of the things that you had to adjust to or figure out a little bit?
Oh man, that's a great question. It's a lot. So, I mean, from the software thing, the thing I learned out from that software company I had is how important sales and marketing actually is to success. Even if you think you have the right product, you need just as much work on the sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And so that's something with Disrupt Equity I've made sure not to make that mistake, right? Really doubling down on that part of the business. Another one is just, growing, right? I mean, I like to say kind of growing a company it's kind of like, I used to do a lot of mountain climbing, but you climb, different hills. So once you get over this hill, then you see the next set of fires. Yeah. Then you kind of glow. And so, and I think too many people, and I see this even with close friends, where they fixate and think starting a company, entrepreneurialism is about having everything figured out.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not. It's about making sure that you're not going to make a mistake that you're going to completely regret, but only doubling down on the fires, and everything else is okay. You don't need to figure out every little loose end. It's about kind of really doing the things that matter when they matter more. And it's easier said than done. And it's not that we're perfect, but it's very much needing to be aware of that. And then now kind of where we've gotten to, it's more about enabling people to be as effective as we were, right? I have to not do the things and get out of it because I need to spend my time on other aspects. And that's where kind of mentally we're at now. And, I have a partner on Disrupt Equity. And it's just funny because, I have to kind of pause and say, okay, we need to let this person run with it. Let's just, whatever they do, right? And then we'll see. And then we kind of give feedback, but really enabling others is kind of the new challenge. And so,
okay. I've mentioned Disrupt Equity when I did your intro. You've mentioned a few times. What is it? So people understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. So
Disrupt Equity.
Great question. And I guess a lot of the stuff that I said so far is the combination of Disrupt Equity and Disrupt Management. But Disrupt Equity, long story short, we find investment opportunities, right? Multifamily is our bread and butter, but we're open to other asset classes, whether it's, storage, office space, et cetera. And we will basically put together the deal, right, in terms of the financing, sourcing the deal, and then also raising the money. So we do raise most of our equity with our investors. We invest in every deal as well, but like going back to that analogy earlier, for raising $3 million, right, that's coming from our investor pool, right? And we do have all sorts of different investors. A lot of them are engineers and doctors, but I mean up and down the spectrum of people. And then we will buy the asset, operate, implement the business plan, obviously, with the goal of getting returns for people. So that's Disrupt Equity. Now, out of necessity, we've also started Disrupt Management, right? And that's where we're seeing kind of the gap in the market. There's not a good management company that's modernized. And, it obviously does our deals too. So,
yeah. Do you take one-offs in Disrupt Management, or is it just for you guys or large clients who have a lot of doors?
No, so we do third-party management now. So far, it's been for friends, people that we know, right, or guy directly connected to. We haven't done, blast of marketing because I'm trying to get all the house in order first. But we'll take on management of deals if they make sense, right? It's in markets that we're already in, right, or someone has a big enough meat in a market to kind of get into, right? Because ultimately, it's not called, some random management company. It's called Disrupt Management, which sometimes I'm like, oh man, that's our name. So we have to be, we have to perform, right? It really that's what makes me nervous now. So
yeah, I got it. So you scaled to 1,500 units in less than 3 years. Talk to me about that. What's involved? That sounds like breakneck. It sounds crazy fast, riding a rocket ship. How did you do that and stay profitable and efficient and responsible and all that good stuff?
No, so good question. So we're at 1,500 units now. We've sold a few deals too. So we've done a few deals full cycle in that time frame too. So ultimately, it's about having a good partner and about performing. I think it's about performing. And this is where whenever we first started, we were kind of a breath of fresh air for our investors, right? In terms of doing things differently, full transparency, full visibility, right? People like that. And then performing, right? And telling people you've performed. I think a lot of people that we weren't good at that at the beginning. I'm like, we've home runned our deals. I'm like, we should talk about that more, right? People see that. Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to systematizing, right? So actually, you asked about the VAs, and I had this train of thought, then I lost it. Another thing too is we underwrite more deals than anyone I know. I mean, I have that systematized I spend a lot of my day on the phone with brokers, figure out what's happening, what deals are blowing up, where my opportunities might be. I get the email and I can quickly give them feedback because guess what? We have that button down between the VAs doing the first stab, pulling crime reports, pulling income, all of the things. Even we do have our VAs do the initial plugging in all the numbers in our model, which is kind of complicated, but we have one that's buttoned that up. And then I have my acquisitions guy that kind of then, sanity checks it all, right? But really it's about systematizing all the parts of the business. And I told this to my partner early on is, once we kind of, it's like crossing that first hill. I told him now we're at this weird inflection point where we're either going to drown because we're going to have too much and be able to do it all and grow, or we're going to have to double down and grow quickly. And then when we did that, luckily, we doubled down. And I just remember we were turning every stone to find deals that made sense. We knew we had to buy a few to kind of grow to where we can support more staff, right?
Gotcha.
And so for us, I guess the biggest thing is we've dumped every dollar back in the company. I mean, we've been very much. That's luckily I have a partner who thinks the same way. And, it's been about growing that. And so rather than me pulling money out, I'd rather go hire on someone that could do it better than me. Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. So to that end, how do you find investors and build those relationships? Like where are you finding these folks?
So my favorite investors are the ones that came from their friends. We did an exercise once where we had like one investor that literally brought on about 20, 30 friends at some point, just from word of mouth, if you really chain it down.
Yeah.
And so those are the best, right? Whenever you perform, guess what? Those guys want to come in on the next deal and they tell their friends about it.
Yep.
But, going out to events, right? Podcasts like this attract people, right? It's more, it goes back to that marketing thing where people should know more about what you do, right? Like me, I'll be the first one to say, I used to never use Facebook. I never, I just didn't, right? But now it's more about kind of building the brand, sharing what we're doing, but add value, right? Do it in a non-spammy way. I think a lot of people think it's got to be a sales approach, whereas our methodology has always been very much how do we teach, educate, add value? And then, that naturally leads into kind of other relationships.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like jab, 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 right hook or whatever. Like just value, before you ever even think about asking for anything. Okay, so I had a question. Now I lost my train of thought. I know I was going to ask you. So are you bringing on, is it just all like accredited people, or are you openly advertising, or what? No,
so for us, it's been both, right? It just depends on the deal.
Okay.
So, some deals you're allowed to market, some deals you're not. And so, and it's funny because even the deals where we were allowed to market, I feel like we were just so bombed. We didn't even try that. I'm just like banging my head on the wall. Cause really, I know a lot about online digital marketing and I haven't really been able to use that for, actually raising money on a deal, right?
Yeah.
We just kind of, we've just been at the times that we've done it's called the 506C, right? Where it's accredited only, but you can market it. We just haven't had the time. And so too much kind of was going on and, we're able to raise the money without kind of doing it.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. So sometimes you can reach out. So I know, and just so people know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't think you're a lawyer. Just be careful before you start advertising any deals and interest rates and returns and all that. You get so much trouble.
Yeah, if anyone's raising money, you should absolutely talk to an SEC attorney. I'm happy to make recommendations, right? There's a process to raising money, right? And raising it the right way or not. And there's a lot that goes into structuring. And so people don't realize it, but any deal that you do, there's just a lot of legal side of things that have to happen, from the contract to getting all the entities created, to all the SEC compliance paces, to getting all the right filings done.
Yeah.
And so I think some people they think they can kind of glom together some chunks of money, but a lot of people don't think do it the right way. So
totally.
There's definitely a method to that madness.
Yep. SEC attorney. That's the takeaway here. Go to them before you start doing anything. All right. So let's talk about what does your business look like today? What's the scope and I don't know if it's going to be numbers, but just what does it look like today size wise and what you're doing? And what's your goal? What's your plan? And how are you going about that?
So great question. So I think, currently Disrupt as a whole, all right, I've kind of, we've kind of taken the Berkshire Hathaway model is really what I like to say now, because Disrupt Equity was kind of the top, but then there's Disrupt Management, we have strategic insurance, we have kind of, financing. So we've been able to grow some of these other pieces and, across the whole thing is probably about 70 people, right? Because management's kind of labor intensive, right? I mean, you have a lot of staff, maybe even more actually, now that I think about it. But it's really, I guess my new train of thought is the guys right now finding deals is hard. I mean, people are buying stuff, but I think a lot of the stuff's being overpaid. Because like I said, we look at more deals than anybody I know. I mean, I have that stuff down to an art, right? I mean, like volume wise, right? Yeah. There's a lot of junk out there. People are overpaying. And, if you go back to the gold rush, the people that made the most money in the gold rush are the people selling the tools, right? And I've been really thinking more in my head about how do we, provide, I think we're kind of in that golden age of syndication, right? Where there's just, because of the ability for people to learn and get self-educated is becoming a lot more available. Yeah. Right. And so I've been really, how do we provide a lot of the right pieces along the way, syndication in a box, right? Where we can add, and add value for every one of them. And then this business grows from that business. And so, but it's ultimately about making sure you perform. Each business needs to stand alone, but kind of thinking down that model and building that ecosystem. So,
okay. What's the goal? What are you going to disrupt next? Like what's the ultimate
goal? The goal
here?
For me is to continue to vertically integrate, right? And starting to, as we buy deals, I mean, we're looking at doing more development type of stuff, right? Where the numbers make more sense because the C value add is just getting too expensive. I don't know why people would pay that if I get a brand new property for this better price. Yeah. That's the thing, but really maybe ultimately packaging it up, right? I don't know where the end goal is, right? It's about building a company that people love working at. That's important to me, right? And, in a culture that people enjoy. I mean, I don't make people come into the office. It's very dynamic. I've taken a very tech approach to it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's, that's been easy to do on the disrupt equity side. The management side is a little harder to do that, but really trying to build that. And, to me, I enjoy building the company and seeing how we can kind of grow. And, for us, we've started, I guess, I'll now, I haven't even told anyone about this, but we have a kind of charity that we put together too, right? So Disrupt Gives, and really thinking about how do we kind of position all these things to where they fund this charity that can kind of then go off and do other more fun things, I guess I'd say. So.
I love
and then the pipe dream is if you have this whole vertically integrated company and some big company off of Wall Street decides to get into real estate, well, they can pick up the full enchilada, right? But that's 10 years away. Who knows?
I love it. And thanks for just kind of talking about the charity real briefly that you do, because I think that's important. People, I think everyone assumes, they just want to hear how much money I'm making or how we're growing and how profitable. Honestly, I like talking to people, and I like dealing with people who are, charity minded and good people, because there's just a lot of, butt heads out there that are making money that I would just assume not associate with. So I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. I prefer to be more of just kind of the sleeper and person doing kind of cool things.
Yeah,
for me, it's the fun of the thrill, right? The chase is just moving that thing and then going off and doing more effective things.
Totally. Let's real quick talk about COVID. You're talking about how hard it is right now to buy properties at the right price. And everyone that I've talked to, so no pressure here to be different, but everyone thinks we're heading for some sort of a correction, a downturn, whatever you want to label it as. Things are not going to stay all this like seller market. Everything's highest it can be. Like, what do you think is maybe coming down the pipe? Knowing we don't have crystal balls, I get that. But how are you preparing, and what are you preparing for?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I would say, we are selling a deal right now. I think it's just overpriced. I mean, right now there was kind of what happened is there was like this rubber band effect, right? Everyone stopped in May and June. Now there's all this pent up demand and people are willing to overpay for stuff. And I mean, hey, we're offloading a deal too, so I get to ride that. But ultimately, I don't know what the future holds. So I have kind of two schools of thought. Cash is king, just building up cash across all the properties, right? Because I don't know, especially whenever you have things like the CDC moratorium, right, on evictions, things like that. I don't know how long we have to self-sustain, right? And we're not getting any sort of discounts or any benefits, right? And so, cash is king, and, educating our investors and saying, look, the money just going to sit there at the property right now. Yes, we can give it out right now, but let's just hold on because we don't know if it's going to be a 6-month problem, a year problem, a 2-year problem, or a 1-month problem. Yeah. So I think cash is king. The other side to that too is just kind of, systematizing what we're doing. I think I'm glad we have property management in-house, but really providing resources to tenants, right? Because, the thing you got to realize, I think a lot of people don't realize, the more you educate your tenants, the better. Yeah. Right. Providing them resources, options, right. And, that's a win-win. And so luckily, that's been working out in our favor. We've had some of the best collections so far. But again, with all the government stimulus money, that makes it easy. Right. So I don't really like to brag about that. It's not something that impressive, honestly. Yeah. But then the big thing to me, though, is that, a lot of what we invest in is not for the 1-year horizon, 2-year horizon. I don't know what the next 1 or 2 years looks like. Sure. Right. And frankly, as long as we can sustain, I almost don't care. Right. And so really thinking bigger picture, though, all of this money just got pumped into the economy.
Yeah.
The people that know how to invest will continue to know how to invest. The people that don't know how to invest will continue not to know how to invest. It's sad but true, right?
Yeah.
And some people will jump here or there, but that's the general thing. And so that money will trickle up. And with 10-year treasuries, pretty much useless, right? That money's going to look to invest in something.
Yep.
And guess what? The only place you're going to get a return that is even decent, right? With real estate, I mean, it's still strong returns.
Yeah.
Even if that gets, let's say that 7 cap goes to a 4 cap. 4 is still a really high return for someone that's looking at getting a 10-year instead, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in the long run, I think actually real estate probably do very well. I think there's going to be even more cap rate compression, which is sad but true, right? But I mean, with interest rates as low as they are right now, I mean, literally you can get 3% interest rate on a 30-year, 10-year note in multifamily. That's with 5 years interest only. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's going to attract people. So I think valuations are going to get even tighter, right? Cap rates are going to compress. That's in the long run. So yeah, hopefully that's not too long-winded. And hopefully it's different than what everyone else has been saying. But I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. And, it worries me. It totally, it just doesn't make sense to me right now, especially with just the stock market flying. It just doesn't make sense, right? The fundamentals don't make sense. And so I've been slowly kind of cashing out on that side and just, holding on. I mean, for me, I just look at it on my personal side. I'd rather just not ride the run up that may happen in the next 5 months or the rundown. I just kind of sit on the sideline for a little bit.
Well, when the fundamentals are not making sense, there's potentially something wild that's going to happen, right? It can't. The fundamentals cannot not make sense indefinitely. Something's going to change, right? So I love it, man. So is there? How can people get a hold of you if they're interested? If they want to learn more about Disrupt Equity or any other Disrupt products that you and your vertical integration have? How can people get a hold of you and learn more?
Yeah, no, I mean, feel free to reach out. I mean, either Facebook, my LinkedIn, disruptequity.com, or send me an email, guys. I mean, I'm a pretty open guy. I'm happy to talk. So Feras, Feras @disruptequity.com.
Okay, got it. And we'll get that in the show notes so everyone can find it. If you're driving, running on a treadmill, whatever, don't worry about it. We got you in the show notes. Man, Feras, thanks for being on. I really do appreciate this. Just a wealth of knowledge. I love talking to people who came from outside of real estate and they're trying to bring us into the 21st century, because I think sometimes we're antiquated in the way we do things unnecessarily. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. It's super exciting. I love every part of it. I love how you're, like I said, just kind of bringing up the grade a little bit for everybody. So very cool to hear your story. Thanks for being here, man. If ever I can do anything for you, let me know, and we'll see you next time.
No, thanks for having me, man. Some of the best questions I've been asked, so thank you.
Oh, thanks. All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I had a good time in interviewing Feras. Smart guy. I love guys that come from that tech industry, and they always see such an opportunity, and they should, because real estate's a little bit antiquated sometimes, and you can come in and really disrupt. And it's exactly what he named his company. It's exactly what he's doing. He is coming in and trying to help us find a better way and find a better way for his company to service investors and his lenders and things. So I love it. Anytime someone comes in and tries to improve in an industry that's a little bit lagging behind at times, it's a cool thing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that and got something out of it. I love the part where he's talking about how he started and things that he did right and wrong. It's always important to hear not just the success stories, but and he's a success story, obviously, but to hear along the way they did things that didn't work, right? Because we're all human. We all make mistakes. So I love hearing that stuff too. Guys, bottom line is, it's all good stuff. It's all knowledge that you can utilize in your business, whether you have one now or you're planning on starting one. But nothing happens until you go out there and take action. Execution is king, right? Get out there and execute. Make today the best day. Go apply this knowledge. Become better, faster, stronger than you are today, and you will succeed. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next time. Okay. You're still there. You're still listening. That's awesome. And I really appreciate that. Now, hopefully it wasn't an accident. Hopefully you didn't leave the room and I'm just talking to an empty room right now. But assuming you're still there, I want to do something really, really cool for you. For a limited time, I want to give you a free digital download of my book, the entire book, Level Jumping. If you're a listener to the show, you know it just came out, and it really details how I took my business from being like one where I was just doing a few deals a month, maybe 1 or 2 deals a month, to doing over 10 and sometimes 15 deals a month and over 100 a year. And I went from doing very little profit to over $1 million in profit. And I made that transformation in a 12-month period. And this book talks about what I did, the steps I took to transform my business, and how you can too. So grab a free digital download, and you can get that by texting the words "just start as 2 words now, just start to the number 55444. So text just start to 55444. I will send you a free digital download of my book. It's the complete book. There's nothing held back, and that'll be completely yours just for making it to the end of the show and listening to me. And I really, really appreciate it, guys. So I want to do something nice for you. I do this every once in a while at the end of shows. And if you listen to the very end, every once in a while, I do a giveaway like this. So hopefully you enjoy that. Go grab a free copy. I hope you read it. I hope you love it. Reach out. Let me know what you think. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.